Hello. In this video we're going to look at one of the ways in which an office holder such as an administrator or a liquidator can claw back money from an insolvent estate. Preferences. I've put up on the screen an excerpt from the relevant section on preferences, but in short, a preferential transaction is one where the company enters into a transaction with a creditor, which means that creditor has been put back in a better position than other creditors. So the most common example would be a situation where a company pays back loans from associated parties rather than other trade creditors or HMRC. For a preference payment to a creditor to be successfully challenged, the office holder will need to establish the following. Firstly, that the company was insolvent at the time the payment was made or became insolvent as a result of it. Secondly, that by entering into the transaction, the beneficiary creditor was put into a better position than other creditors. And finally, in entering into that transaction, there was a desire to prefer that creditor. The desire is an extremely important part of a preference because this section isn't designed to prevent companies from making crucial payments to keep a company trading where the directors believe they can avoid insolvent liquidation. So for example, paying a supplier to release new stock in order to continue trading when you're not paying other creditors isn't necessarily automatically a preference. There's no obvious desire to prefer in that case. The directors don't necessarily want to pay that supplier over others, but they need to because if they don't, they won't get their stock, and if they don't get that, they won't be able to continue to trade. Contrast that with a payment of an unsecured loan to a director's friend. It would be much more difficult to establish the basis on which it was in the interest of the general body of creditors for the director to make that payment than paying the company's other creditors. You'll note on the right hand side that preferences can only be challenged if they've been made at a relevant time. For unconnected parties, that's within 6 months up to the date of the formal insolvency process commencing, and for connected parties, within 2 years. The Insolvency Act defines these connections. A party is connected to the company if they are a director or shadow director or an associate of them or the company. So now you need to follow on to find out what an associate is. Associates include a wide range of people, and this slide shows the full section of the Act defining associates. It's pretty long and complicated, so I'm not going to take you through it in detail, but I have distilled it into a brief chart to provide some more user-friendly guidance. You'll see relatives of court, wives, husbands, employees and associated companies, amongst others. However, the section of the Act provides more details, so please don't simply rely on this chart as a guide. In distressed situations where directors are under pressure, preference payments tend to be made inadvertently, but they are an area that people should really consider carefully, and as always, where there's any doubt, it's worth seeking professional advice. Thanks.